Israel Update with Gatty Tao and Mike Duran. Hello and welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. It's been 1 year, 8 months and 20 days since this war began. It is now the 27th of June. I'm Gatty Tao in Tel Aviv, and Mike Duran is back at the Hudson Institute in Washington, D.C. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Gatty. Hello from the headquarters.
After many attempts to record the show that were sabotaged by forces yet undisclosed, we hope that this time we can air our show. The last time, we have a wonderful show recorded with guesses about the question, is America going to intervene or not in the war? We thought that would be a little dated. It became dated, I think, a day later, but
You
we had to
got to explain that you
Yes.
threw water on your computer.
You don't see my table here, but there is no liquid on my table anymore, and there will never be any. Let me see if I can show you where the liquids are right now. Can you see, Mike?
Yes, I see that.
Yeah, you know why. Because I knocked a glass of water on my computer, and
Just as we were finishing the best episode ever.
ever. And so I had to send it to the repair shop, and by the time I got it back, the episode was useless. So the world has changed. Would you agree, Mike, that is a fair assessment?
The world has changed. The question is, how much has it changed? I think that's what we're going to be discussing today. Are we in a
what
completely
direction?
new world, or just an altered version of what we knew before?
So let's start with the headlines.
Okay, I only have three items here, Gotti. The first, U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, reiterated Wednesday his belief that additional countries will join the Abraham Accords, which normalized ties between Israel and several Muslim nations. Witkoff also said he hopes that there will be a comprehensive peace agreement with Iran in the wake of the 12-day war that ended on Tuesday. Second item, Gotti, hours after U.S. President Donald Trump's unprecedented call on Truth Social, that was on Wednesday, saying, quote, Bibi Netanyahu's trial should be canceled immediately. Hours after that, President Herzog called on both sides to begin intensive talks to try to reach a plea bargain. Very interesting. I'm sure you have some thoughts on that. And then finally, President Trump insisted on Thursday that no enriched uranium was moved out of Iran's nuclear facility at Fordo. That he made that statement amidst a very loud public debate, which has been going on about how much of Iran's nuclear program, about whether Iran's nuclear program was set back after Israel's attacks, and by how much. Over to you.
Yeah, so first let me add a quote from President Trump. He said that the United States saved Israel, and it's now going to save Bibi Netanyahu. I dispute humbly, thankfully, but I dispute both assertions, and I've been saying this on the media here, that the United States acted in its own interest, and that we helped the United States and showed our worth, no less than the United States acted for us. Would you agree with this assessment, Mike?
I agree with everything you just said. And I just want to point out, I don't do this very often, Gotti. I don't do this very often. But I think you and I, have to take a step back now and just say, we got it right. Did we not get it right?
All along. I mean, just look back at our episodes.
You and I have bet continuously, not always with tremendous happiness, but we have always bet on Trump and Netanyahu. And
I have to confess, I was depressed in the middle when there were rumors.
There were moments when you flagged. There were moments when you flagged. But I was here. I was here to tell you.
Yeah,
the glass is half full. You remember that?
Yeah. How do you say in English, "Ani ma'adeti," and you stop me from falling?
may I,
Lim'od. That's when,
lim'od?
yeah.
לא יודע מה זה lim'od.
Oh, wow. I found a word you don't know in Hebrew.
Yeah, you got me. Lim'od.
Yeah, it's
Is
to,
that to is that to waver?
it, not exactly. It's to almost fall. It's like to take a wrong step and almost fall.
Yeah, I was wavering, and
Yeah.
I
But
was I was teetering. I was wavering. I
yeah,
was
but I think th this is you make it sound
lim'od.
as if we guessed some stuff right, and that I and let me deepen and enlarge our self
Congratulations.
congratulatory mood, and say that we were right about the analysis. We were right about the forces at play and their potential interplay. And that is what I think was important. And this is why you should, on the one hand, listen to our show, and on the other, sneer at other people's shows. That's my opinion.
Well, that was my subtext, but now you've
Yeah. Now I just put it out there.
uh, yes.
So we'll start with the war. I have a lot to say about what's going on inside Israel too, because this has really strange repercussions. Uh,
I'm
um,
sitting here, I'm sitting here embarrassed that I didn't know what Lim Od was.
yeah. Oh,
You do this to me all the time. I think I may have said this before for our viewers here. Your Twitter always annoys me because it's the rare tweet from you that doesn't have a word in it that I don't know. That I mean, almost every tweet in almost every tweet there's a word, there's a phrase, there's some kind of and I look it up in the dictionary. You have
but as but
incredible
as
range of imagery and so on.
I also break
I
dance.
I hate you. Yeah. No, you have a fantastic rhetorical gift, and
Thank you.
it's in both languages.
Thank you. Um, uh, Mary, just return the compliment and say that your knowledge of Hebrew and the words you don't know just point out at how extensive
Oh,
it may be.
stop! No, 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 no,
Now
not,
that we have,
no, no,
oh, no,
not yet.
no, no.
No,
Mike, you say so many times on this show, you say,
no.
your English is amazing. So when you say centrifuges, and we all know how that ends. Tov,
I was listening to
and that,
Amit Segal yesterday, and he said centrifuge.
this is because this is
Made
how
me
you say in
think of
Hebrew.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we have finished the self-congratulations segment. And now let's talk about my work. No, I'm kidding.
Okay. Let's talk about you. You're
Uh,
wonderful. Yeah.
so let's start with the big question, Mike. What has changed?
Wow. Uh, so look, let's go back to October 8th
Hmm.
and think about where October 8th, 2023, and think about where we were then. You know, and then we just had this war where Israel had air superiority over Iran, took out 30 of the top leaders of the Iranian military and nine of the
Top scientists.
nuclear scientists, all within minutes of each other, and
Did you
and
see the
and
report just as an asterisk? Did you see the report on how we took out some of the generals? The Mossad is just they
I heard I saw a tweet or something where I didn't see a detailed description where they actually created the system in which they communicated with each other
yeah.
in an emergency about what to do. Is
And
that
they
right?
summoned them to a meeting.
Yeah, is
The
that true?
Mossad, some
Is that
according I don't have confirmation for that, but according to one source, the
that
Mossad just it's not a WhatsApp group, right? It's their clandestine system, and it summoned them all to a meeting that exploded.
I I hope that's true.
Yeah,
I
no,
hope that's true.
it's
If
a
it's true, it's too good. I don't know if I told you this on I'm sure I've told you this before. I don't know if I did it on this show that back in 2000 probably 8 there was this incredible rescue operation in Colombia where the Colombian government rescued these hostages and it did it by imitating the voice the leader of the FARC, because the hostage keepers, the jailers or whatever you want to call them, the people who are holding the hostages in the middle of the jungle, could communicate with their leader only by shortwave radio. And the Colombian government got on top of this, and they got a guy who could imitate the voice of the leader of the FARC, and the imitator told the hostage keepers to bring the hostages to a certain clearing at a certain time, and a helicopter would come and take them away. And it was just an incredible rescue, without a shot fired, great strategic blow to the FARC. And all of this happened without a shot being fired. And I happened to have, when I was working in government, for reasons we don't need to go into, I had a ringside seat on all of this. And I knew who was involved and who was not involved. And I'll tell you who was not involved. The Mossad. And then after the thing was so successful that the Mossad put out rumors that they had done it. So it made,
Yeah.
yeah. So
I have a friend.
they're very good at branding them. They are very, very good, but they're also very good at branding themselves. So whenever I hear any claim of what they did, I'm always thinking, well, I don't know.
I have a friend who produces security cam systems, and
Yeah.
when they caught someone in Boston, I think it was on the subway, for some crime, and it was a big story in the news, and he was asked about it. He said, "Is this your system?" And he said, "I can't comment on this." So this is Mossad can't comment on it.
When I worked in government, for me, you say, what's changed? The fact that the United States, that Donald Trump understood that he can attack Iran and not a single American will die, that is an amazing change in American policy, because we have always been so afraid of these guys for reasons I've never understood.
Yeah,
And
12, what is the name? GRU? No, GRU is something else.
the GBU 57.
Yes, so 12 GBU 57s just collapsed Tucker Carlson's view of foreign policy.
Yeah, not entirely, since his view of foreign policy is that the Jews control Donald Trump. He's disappointed that those bombs were dropped, but he's still convinced the Jews are in charge. I was going to tell you though that I totally lost train of my thought. I was gonna tell you an amusing anecdote which I've lost. Okay,
But perhaps we're too amused for a war. So
war. No, but the war is over. The war is over.
yeah,
This stage of the war is over. And we won. And we won.
So but you said that look back at the 8th of October.
Oh, right. Yeah. So who could have imagined that? Who could have imagined that it would end this way? And who could have imagined that Israel would have this air superiority over Iran and Hezbollah would not fire a shot? In fact, I didn't put it in the news this morning, but this morning Israel's hitting Hezbollah a couple more times just to remind them, don't think that we're gonna let you come back. And Israel, for the first time in history, Gadi, went to war with the United States. That has never happened before. The United States historically has, you think back to the Gulf War, 1990-91, when Saddam Hussein was throwing Scud missiles at you, Gadi, he was trying to kill you. And the United States bent over backwards to prevent Israel from carrying out any military operation against Saddam Hussein at that time, because it thought it would taint the United States. Remember, the United States embraced Assad. Assad was part of the coalition to topple Saddam Hussein.
That was the reason they had to restrain us, because if we had joined the coalition, it would have collapsed.
Yeah, maybe Assad would not have joined. I don't think so. I don't think it would have collapsed. But anyway, there was always been this sense that we taint ourselves by association, particularly military association with Israel. We taint ourselves with our Muslim allies. Donald Trump made a different calculation. He calculates that that association with Israel in a successful war enhances the prestige of the United States in the Middle East. It's a great calculation. And
and it worked.
and just to emphasize it, he comes out afterwards and says, "I love Bibi Netanyahu, and I want to do more." Basically, I mean, as I read that statement, I want to do more things with him. So stop all this nonsense, so the two of us can do wonderful things. That's it's amazing.
Yeah, and contrary to all the rumors that, as we say in Hebrew, a black cat, you say a black cat has passed between them? Do you have that idiom in English?
I don't believe so. No.
So it's a Hebrew idiom for saying that the relationship soured. So let me invade your territory, Mike, by attempting some geopolitical and strategic analysis.
Invade
What
away.
I've been saying here is that based on much of what you say and what I read from your work and what we talk about here is that the United States alliance system in the region has been in retreat, and the axis of China, Russia, and Iran has been replacing it. Let me remind you that you wrote a piece with Peter Rao called China's Middle East Kingdom, I think it was.
China's
Um,
emerging Middle East kingdom.
Emerging Middle East kingdom, and the argument is that silently China is creeping into the region and attempting to replace America where it was retreating, and the focal point of the whole thing was Iran.
Yes.
The regional integration policy by the Biden administration is actually a form of American retreat without acknowledging that the meaning of this is that through this access, through Iran, this access is pushing America out. And the test case for it is that the Saudis, who always are good at taking care of their own interest, have tried to shift their allegiance slightly towards the Chinese, Russian, Iranian axis for fear, basically. But the whole thing, if I can, the whole thing is funneled through Iran because Iran had this net of proxies all over the region, and it was basically emptying the sovereignty of Arab countries by creating chaos in them and sending their militias and proxies. And now what Israel did in this war is cut the arms of the octopus, and now together with America, it hit its head. And
Yes.
therefore, opened the way, at least. There was a wonderful piece by your colleague, Zineb Riboa, about this, how this is a hit for the Chinese strategy in the region. And now the funnel through which this whole, or most of this strategy is conducted has just been removed. Is America again supreme in the region, Mike?
Yeah, it has advanced itself significantly, very significantly. But we have to remember that Iran is not out of the game. It's wounded, and that's very dangerous to have a wounded dog roaming around because I don't know what it's going to do. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here because I do think that this is a major victory. It's a major victory along the lines of the 1967 war. But let's remember that the 1967 war was followed just 3 years later by the War of Attrition. So it's a tremendous operational victory against Iran. But will it lead to a permanent strategic shift, or will Iran just recover? Yeah, it's analogous to 67 right now. It's also analogous to where Hezbollah was after 2006. Although I think this ended more conclusively in the favor of Israel than the Second Lebanon War did. But if we map, if we map, as you once did in one of your articles, if we map this, the Iran-Israel wars on the Israel-Egypt wars, then there have been two Iran-Israel wars, the Second Lebanon War and this one.
Why don't you first lay out the comparison with Egypt?
So Egypt led first under the monarchy and then under Gamal Abdel Nasser. It led the opposition to Zionism in the Arab world in 48, 56. 67, 70, and 73. It led wars against Israel, and the Egyptian-Israeli conflict didn't end until Camp David, until after 19 or until the Sinai disengagement.
But you have to say, since maybe American listeners are not aware enough of the paranoia of Israelis, or the claustrophobia of Israelis, which I grew up in, by the way. Going abroad was like stepping out of the castle, or getting out of the I don't want to say jailhouse because they're not miserable or in jail, but there was a sense of claustrophobia because what Nasser was trying to do was create a noose around us, and we are. Look again at the map. I just listened to this. I don't remember now his stand-up comedian. Amazing guy with a strong Israeli accent, bad English, does amazing English stand-up comedy. He said, Israel is so small, there is no room for the name of the country in the country. Look at the map. There is no room. And if you look at this huge hostile region, and Nasser was building an army and trying to unite the Arabs in one mega state, that was called Pan-Arabism, one nation, in order to suffocate this tiny Israel. So we had to go through 4 wars and 1 peace accord in order to break that noose. And now we did it, Mike. I predicted that it would take at least a decade to break the Iranian noose, and boy, was I wrong.
5 wars.
Which is the 5th?
The War of Attrition, 1970.
I was counting from 56, not from 48.
Okay, so that's Nasser is in 56, but the Egyptians also led the Pan-Arab cause in 48 as well.
Yeah, so you're right. So 5 wars and more than 25 years. And I predicted wrongly that it would take 10 years to break the Iranian noose, and it took. I said at the beginning of the program, right?
Who could have imagined that this would happen this way?
1 year, 8 months, and well, that's 3 days and 17 days.
But you broke the Iranian noose. But the question is, are we in 1967 or 1973? Is this a tremendous operational victory that just opens up a new stage in the ongoing conflict with Iran? Or is this the operational victory like 73 that brings the conflict to an end basically? And we don't know, and there's too many things that we don't know. For example, why did 73 end the war? Well, there was no more Nasser. The guy running Egypt in 73 was Sadat, and Sadat was not a Pan-Arabist, but an Egyptian nationalist. We didn't know that at the time because he needed the Pan-Arab coalition to put maximum pressure on Israel. But he wanted to do that. He wanted to attack Israel and recover Egypt's honor in order to get out of the conflict. He was looking for a way out from the get-go, and the Americans actually, Kissinger understood that.
He wasn't looking for peace with Israel, though, until after the war.
But he was looking for recovery of the Suez Canal and maybe not full-blown peace, but extraction from the conflict.
Yeah.
So the issue here is that we don't. One of the things we don't know is what is the impact of this war going to be on the Iranian leadership. Are they going to become more pragmatic, a kinder, gentler Islamic Republic, or are they going to become more radicalized? And there's no way to know at this point.
I'll offer an educated guess on the optimistic side. If it is going to change, it's not the heads and the clerical cabal that is now running Iran. It doesn't seem to me to be capable of flexibility. It's like the Politburo. But what happened with the fall of the Soviet Union is that change came from the center of the system, that people that grew up in the KGB, who knew the truth and saw the futility of continuing the economic and the foreign policy of the USSR that led it to a dead end and to what was going to be an economic collapse. So the question is, are we going to see the emergence of such forces from within the Revolutionary Guard, or there is also the army, and the army is an organ of the state and not an organ of the or not as identified with the Iranian Revolution. What do you think?
Well, yes, I mean, it would be great. I don't think we could do this because we're not good at this kind of thing, but it would be great if we could foment uh, tension, between the Artesh, the regular military, and the Revolutionary Guard. But the Revolutionary Guard is a huge, in addition to everything else, it's a huge economic monster. I mean, the Revolutionary Guard run the Iranian economy for all intents and purposes. So you're going to have a revolution for the regular military to take over. It
Yeah,
would have to be a revolution.
but from within, since it's embedded in the economy, there is also reason to assume that it's not outside the realm of the possible that these people would say, we want to take care of our economic interests and we don't want another Israeli American hit on everything we own.
Well, you sound a lot like Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff
That's not
gave
a
a
that's not a
Steve.
nice remark, Mike.
Why?
I
Steve
don't want to
Witkoff
sound
is
like
a
Steve Whitlock.
respected, but you do. He is a he gave an interview on Wednesday to MSNBC, which I would encourage everyone to listen to. It's very interesting because it reveals. I think we've seen this a lot from Witkoff and Trump, and I believe that when Witkoff is talking, it's like when Ben Rhodes talks, you hear Obama. That when Ben Rhodes talks about Iran, he is expressing everything that he's is saying is what goes through Obama's mind, because he's the spokesperson for Obama. I think when Witkoff talks, there's a lot of
He
Donald
calls
Trump
it a
in there.
melding of minds. Let me remind
Yes,
you,
yes.
between him and
I
Obama. He said,
but I
"I
think
don't know where I end and he begins."
oh, it's so difficult. Yes,
He actually
that's true.
said that.
Yeah, I know it's true love. It's like me and my wife. I don't know where my wife ends and I begin, but that's what happens in 30 years of marriage. So the uh, Witkoff is talking about a prosperous Iran, just like Obama did, by the way. I want a prosperous Iran, and they now that we've taken he said we've taken the military element out of the Gulf, and now the GCC and Iran can get down to the serious business of getting rich together. I think I think that it moves far too quickly toward
Yeah.
the assumption that the guys running Iran are all about getting rich and not about jihad. We learned that lesson, didn't we, Gandhi, on October
Yeah,
7th?
yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying that the forces of economic, and I don't think like Wyckoff that we can seduce them with prosperity. I just think that we can threaten them with economic hardship.
But
So
they're sly sons of bitches. They've always been incredibly sly, incredibly clever, and their position their position in the region is based on their proxy network. Even though it's so damaged, they still have the Houthis. The Houthis is a huge card for them,
yeah.
huge card, because it's attractive to the Chinese.
So you're saying curb your enthusiasm?
Yeah, I'm a skeptic. I mean, I want. I'm not going to jump. Look, there's such a history of this with America. Americans tend to believe that money rules the world,
Yeah.
and so in 1986, when in the midst of the Iran-Iraq war, we got into this whole arms for hostages mess with the Iranians because we believed that they were that they were under such pressure in the Iran-Iraq war. They were under economic pressure, they were under military pressure, that their pragmatism came to the fore. By the way, this was an Israeli mistake as well. It was a combined U.S.-Israeli delusion that the pressure, that the revolutionary fervor had played itself out because of the pressure they were under in the Iran-Iraq war. And so we sent these spare parts to them in order to open up a channel to the moderates whom we knew were there. And so we keep, every couple of years, we convince ourselves that there's a group of moderates in Tehran who want to cut a deal with the United States.
That was also the case with the United States in the Cold War. There was always the assumption that Stalin's room of maneuver is limited by the hardliners in the Kremlin behind him that he's afraid
There's always
of.
the moderates, and we're always aligning ourselves with the moderates in the Kremlin. Yeah.
And
it's in the American character to do this.
But I think it's contagious in this partnership between America and Israel, because this is the way the left in Israel for years explained the collapse of the peace process. And if you look at the Oslo process, then you see that the Oslo process rested on the idea that there would be a moderate Palestinian Authority which would curb Hamas's terrorism. And the Rabin sold this peace accord to the Israelis, saying if terror, the litmus test would be terror. If terror continues, then we would stop in our tracks and just retract the whole thing. And what happened is that when terror began, they started talking about the enemies of peace on both sides. And this assumed that there was somehow someone who is not an enemy of peace on the other side. And that assumption drove Israeli leader until Trump broke that spell, by the way, with the deal of the century. That brought Israeli leaders to say, we are just not reaching out far enough, well enough to those moderates. And so every time the Palestinians, this is my cat. Marki, תזוזי טיפה.
Somebody in our comments was concerned because they hadn't seen the cats in a while. And
and this is the cat that doesn't show up often. She's amazing, by the way. Shalom, Marki.
How many cats do you have?
Two.
And
this is a smart one, the old and smart one. So it never bothered us that there was whenever we made a deal that they rejected, our conclusion was to make a better deal and make more concessions. And then came Trump with the idea that every time you say no, you will get a worse deal next time, which is like, basic negotiation, game theory knowledge.
Yeah, negotiation 101, which Americans, for some reason, when they're dealing with Iran, they throw it out, but not Donald Trump. Thank God. But
you also wrote, so let's get also into the domestic stuff, because you wrote a piece about how Netanyahu and Trump outfoxed Iran. So we have to say at least a word or two at how everyone was deceived, including us.
Yeah, I was deceived. I hate to admit it. I was totally deceived. It doesn't happen very often in the Middle East. I gotta say, but I was caught.
This was very effective, and this happened on the other side. And our last episode included a burst of laughter from you when I told you that Ben Caspit wrote that here security was so tight that Netanyahu did not disclose this stuff to Sarah.
Oh no, yeah, Ben Caspit. The issue was Ben Caspit had to, because we had two episodes that did not did not make it. Yeah. So Ben Caspit was so appreciative of the attack in the end, and he had to give Netanyahu credit for the attack,
which cost him.
But he managed to stick it to Netanyahu even while giving him credit by saying that the only reason it was able to keep it a secret is he had to keep it a secret from Sarah too. All right. Well, the Israeli left, the Israeli pundits, they never disappoint. Look, back to serious subjects, though. There's so much that we don't know. We have to say we don't know that whether the nuclear program was totally destroyed. We don't. And we don't know what the attitude about it looks like it probably was, but we don't know, and we don't know that where all the fissile material is as well. So what Iran is going to do with that? I didn't put in the news this morning, but the Iranian parliament just passed a law saying that there will be no cooperation between Iran and the IAEA. So we won't be seeing any IAEA monitoring anytime soon there. The we don't know about the nuclear program. We don't know what the Iranians are going to do with regard to their missile program. That's the second major concern of the Israelis after the nuclear program is their missile program, and that could be up and running again very quickly.
Which was accused from the JCPOA. The
Which was-
JCPOA did not limit Iran's ballistic missile industry.
And even if it had, it's very hard to do anything about it because Iran has a completely indigenous missile production capability, and the stuff that the technology that it uses, that it imports from abroad to put in the missiles is very easily acquired. It's dual use stuff that's readily available on markets globally. So
the solution to that, or the what Israel has to look for, is assuming that regardless of whether you and I are optimistic or pessimistic about Iran's intentions, is as long as this regime stay, and we should do everything in our power to undermine it. Don't get me wrong.
yeah.
No, we should undermine it as best we can, and with almost no limitations. Is we have to preserve our freedom of action. Now, what we did in Lebanon is actually great. It's called a ceasefire, but it's a one-sided ceasefire, and the ceasefire means every time you do something that we think is dangerous to us, we are going to reserve the right to hit you very hard on it. But Lebanon and Iran are not the same case. So doing this in Iran is far more tricky. And you can add your comments to my thoughts or on that, Mike. Is that first of all, there is no Lebanon government on the other side of Hezbollah in the case of Iran. So there's no counterforce within Iran that could be used as an anvil against our hammer. That's one. Secondly, it's 1,500 kilometers away, and it is not certain that we would always have the cooperation or lack of intervention by the Turks in Syria and the cooperation of the other Arab countries.
I'm so glad you mentioned the Turks there.
I'm not surprised that you are, Mike.
Because because this I want to point out. I again want to take a victory lap, if I may.
Yeah.
Because
I just stole one because the show that we did not show,
yeah,
that you had one of those moments in which caused me momentary fear, is you suddenly quiz me on geopolitics and you say, so who benefited from this, that, and I said Turkey, just because I know that when you ask these things, you want it to be Turkey.
No,
So but yeah,
I'm not
it
talking
makes
about
sense because
Turkey's the big beneficiary of the war for sure. We'll talk about it later.
absolutely.
But what I'm saying right now is that Israel had an unobstructed air bridge from Israel to Tehran
Through
that went over
Syria.
Syria through Syria, and Shara was given instructions by Erdogan, or strongly encouraged by Erdogan, not to get in Israel's way. That's why, while Erdogan was making fiery anti-Israeli speeches, behind the scenes he was saying, let Israel do what it wants, and also the United States flew its B-2s. Apparently, we don't know exactly, but they didn't come. The the United States did a deception. They didn't come from Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. They came from the West, from the United States. So that means they either went over Turkey itself or they went over Syria. I assume it was Syria. But Turkey didn't obstruct. So you remember the thing that bothered me about that debate that we had here with Don Shiftan was that Don is saying Turkey's an enemy, Turkey's an enemy, Turkey's an enemy, and my point is Israel's enemy is Iran. Don't start clouding the issue because Turkey is a challenge, but you don't want to have too many enemies at once because then you won't be able to take care of what you really have to take care of. And look, the fall of Assad made this all a lot easier. You didn't have the Russians there in Syria. You didn't have Assad. You didn't have the Iranians, and so on. So the rise of the Turks in Syria, at least momentarily, benefited Israel greatly. So let's be aware of the complexity here, and not focus too much on the anti-Israel speeches that that Erdogan gives. They're problematic. I'm not, and I don't want to say that because it was good last week, it's necessarily going to be good next week. But the fact of the matter is, it's an objective fact, cannot be refuted. The rise of Turkey in Syria, for the time being, benefited Israel enormously.
And there's also Azerbaijan and
Yes.
the Azeris inside Iran. So what does that mean for Iran, for the northern theater of Iran vis-a-vis Turkey?
Remains to be seen. But there's no, in my mind, there's no scenario for the future Iran, whether we have some kind of modification of the Islamic Republic or a fall of the Islamic Republic, whatever happens after Khamenei goes, we are going to have more Turkic influence over the over the Iranian government than less. The Persian nationalists are not going to be able, I think, to keep a lid on the Turkic elements in Iran, who want greater, they want to be educated in their own language. Right now, it's illegal for Turkish speakers who make up 1/3 of all Iranians. They're not allowed to be educated
and that's
in
a
their own
huge
language.
nation. We are talking about what, 30 million people, something of that order?
Yeah. Of Turks. Yeah. In Iran. Yeah.
Just to make clear, Azerbaijanis are ethnic Turks.
Yes. Yes. So in Iran, you have a number of different Turkic peoples. The main ones are the Azerbaijanis and the Turkmen that speak different forms of Turkish. But the Azerbaijanis are the largest group by far. They make up probably about 1/3 of the entire population.
And they have a neighboring homeland.
They have two neighboring homelands. See, the Azerbaijanis call the Turkic people of Iran Azerbaijani. The Azerbaijani people in Iran call themselves Turks. So, Turkey's Turkish and Azerbaijan's Turkish are mutually intelligible. Now, in terms of the dialect they speak, the people of Iran speak Azerbaijani Turkish.
So there is
but they call themselves Turks.
So there is a real danger of irredentism in Iran.
Needs to be watched. It's nobody knows. There's an argument out there that Iran is a multi-ethnic nation, but there's an Iranian nation and it's multi-ethnic. And then there's another.
That's like the British Empire, though, right? It's like it's like the UK. It's a multi-ethnic kingdom with an Anglican church and an English monarch.
Wales.
And you're not, and you're all required to speak English.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
all required to speak Farsi, and you can't educate your kids in Turkish or Azerbaijani.
Right. And there's a real chauvinism among the Persians about the Turks. So, but there's another view that says that this is that this is more like the Soviet Union, and that the Turks are the Azerbaijanis the Baluch, the Kurds, the Turkmen. That these are not elements of the Iranian nation. That they are separate nations themselves, or at least some of them are. We have to wait and see. I don't know how it's going to play out.
We're running out of time, and I think you have to go at the top of the hour. Um, so I will just say a few words, and we'll save a segment for this separately in the next show because it's amazing what's happening with the Israeli press. The Israeli press had just had their own Yom Kippur, uh, and everybody saw that, and this is not the first time they were wrong, and it's amazing how the amount of trust that people have in the press can collapse from a pinprick if the balloon is too tight. And this happened in the United States on in 1 hour in the debate between Trump and Biden, when everybody
Yeah.
saw that Sharp's attack when you're one on one was not was just a lie. But it was not the first lie. It was just one lie too much and one lie too obvious. And so
Right.
suddenly the bubble burst. And suddenly you saw things that were happening before, but you refused to see, and that, like nobody cares what they're saying on CNN if on Joe Rogan someone says the opposite, and many more people listen to it.
Yeah.
And as you know, this has been happening here too. As you know, now Netanyahu gave a bunch of interviews after the victory, but all during the war, he gave none to any of the television stations except my podcast. And it was, as you know, aired also on our channel with English subtitles. That's our most viewed show, but it's nothing compared to how many views I got on my Hebrew channel for it. And I think what happened was they were wrong about one thing. They were wrong about the question whether or not the United States was going to intervene. And that there can be an honest mistake here. So why was that the Yom Kippur of the whole industry? It's because suddenly it was so abundantly clear that they were giddy about Trump deserting Netanyahu. They were making victory laps, saying, ha ha ha, America would not intervene. Ha ha ha, you went into this adventure, you risked everything, and there's no exit strategy and whatnot. While the war was actually going on well. And suddenly you looked back at the whole event from October 7th, and you saw these people. And by the way, I made a 10 seconds clip that just exploded on Israeli social media. I said, you were not wrong. You failed because you did not try to explain Netanyahu's policy. Marky, it's in the middle. You tried to sabotage Netanyahu's policy and you failed. It's not that you were wrong. You failed. And it suddenly was so obvious. Look, they were attempting to finish the war without victory at every single step.
Yes.
From before Rafah. If they had their way, and remember, they were warning against regional war. And looking back, we needed a regional war in order to get Iran. And so they tried to for them, it was more important to have Netanyahu lose than to have Israel win.
Yeah.
And that became so obvious that people just viciously turned on them. And I think that, the fanatics, the never Bibi camp, the Bibi derangement syndrome camp, they're hopeless. And now they're saying Iran's nuclear facilities would be reconstructed in 5 weeks or whatever, everything in order to minimize
right.
victory. But it doesn't work. And just today, there is a street parliament, very sweet, of working class people sitting on King George Street. And they come every Friday. They come there and they open a table and bring, pitzuchim, like, what do you call pitzuchim in the
nuts? No, I mean,
Yeah, nuts and sunflower seeds, and
yeah.
they discuss politics, and they were split half and half against Netanyahu. And now I kind of filmed them actually, and they were singing "Bibi Melech Israel," "Bibi King of Israel," because ordinary Israelis whose common sense is far more on the mark than the sophisticated analysts in the anti-Bibi studios, that they just said, this guy said to me, look, he brought the war to a victory in Iran. That's enough. That's enough. He was right all along. And so it was Yom Kippur for our press, and also Ben Caspit is, or as his partner and adversary Yinon Magal says, ambulance to Ramat Sharon. Every time something Bibi succeeds in something, ambulance to Ramat Sharon when Ben Caspit lives.
Yeah, that's amazing. Listen, you got to. We can't close out here without you saying a couple words about this amazing, unbelievably long Truth Social posting by Trump coming to save Netanyahu. What do you think is going on there?
I'll say what people are speculating here. They're saying, "What's the price?" First of all, what's the price? What's the quid pro quo here? And the pessimists are saying, is Trump going to demand a retreat, a cessation, a ceasefire in Gaza, and that's the sugar coating on the pill? And that's the concern. Some people are extremely happy because some people here are rooting for American sanctions against what they call deep state operatives. I have been consistently against this. I was against this with the Biden administration. I think of King Herod and the Roman Empire. We don't need to bring the United States in to settle our quarrels, because we will then become what Netanyahu doesn't want, a vassal state. But the people who argue for it are saying we are already there. The left has used the Biden administration against the right. So why don't we?
Totally. Yeah, my reaction to what you just said, that they're saying what is Trump demanding in return? It's not a bad question, because it's not a bad question with Trump, but in general in international relations, people don't give stuff for free. But I think it's a little simple-minded, because one thing is, if you read that Truth Social posting, it's very clear that Trump is not just talking about Netanyahu. He's talking about himself, right? He sees in the trials against Netanyahu, he sees a mirror of the trials against him, and so on. And I think Trump recognizes that there is a global progressive coalition that is working against the nationalist, the global nationalist alignment.
It's almost as if he read my Nayadim V'Nayachim, my book, or better, John Fonte's Sovereignty or Submission, because that coalition works through weaponizing criminal law and law in general by advancing the power of judiciaries. And in America now, the judiciary is right-leaning, so you don't see that. But all over the rest of the world, the judiciary belongs to a professional caste of progressive jurists, and in Israel they've basically taken over.
So we need
to discuss, Mike, the fact that not only is the trial going to go on, but today the prosecution in Netanyahu's trial rejected Netanyahu's request to be relieved from his testimony for 2 weeks while he's running the war. And I was sort of glad that they did this, because they need to be exposed for the joke that they are. So the judges in the Netanyahu trial are not going to be influenced at all by Donald Trump. They have nothing to win by kowtowing to his ideas. The other way around, they'll enhance their own prestige by defying an American president that can't fire them. But on the other hand, Trump gave enormous tailwind to those of us who think that ridicule is the weapon against our juristocratic masters. because you know that the usurper of the seat of the chief of the Supreme Court here, the president we call him, Yitzhak Amit, who uh, who was not properly appointed to his job, but basically appointed himself because the committee was not convened by the minister who was supposed to head it. So the court ordered the convening of the committee without the minister, and the committee voted him in. So he's not even properly the chief of the Supreme Court, but he is now using the emergency in order to defer debating the question of the legality of the appointment of the new Shabak head. So suddenly it's an emergency and he can't debate that, but he's still accepting petitions from Palestinians against the armed forces. The court can't convene for that matter, but it can convene for Netanyahu's choice of a Shabak head, which is, by the way, not the business of the court at all. It went way beyond the law to intervene in that appointment.
So the other thing is that Trump may well. So what I'm trying to say is that there's an element of self-interest here, right, for Trump to go after this, the coalition against Netanyahu, and then in addition. Witkoff said, as I put in the news, that we're going to see an expansion of the Abraham Accords in some surprising ways. So Trump wants to capitalize on the victory against Iran with some diplomatic victories, and he's got it all planned out with Netanyahu, and that's also in his self-interest. So he wants to, he's got a partnership going here that's pretty successful, and he wants to keep it going. And that's an argument to the Israeli people. Why are you dragging Netanyahu to these discussions about Bugs Bunny toys 20 years ago when there's really serious serious work to be done? I don't know though. I don't know, and I'm also curious to know what these plans are for the expansion of the Abraham Accords. What's that going to look like?
Yeah, we have to talk about that, but I don't think we have any time. Do we have time for readers' comment? We'll call my description of Ben Caspit, I think, the dumbest mistake from my side today. So if you want a dumb mistake, and then
I'll just skip my dumb mistake, and I'll just read a couple of readers because we got to get going here, unfortunately. Actually, I have to go, Gadi. We're gonna have to skimp on the readers too. Sorry, readers. We love
you. We'll double the readers' comment section next week, and we
time.
will be here next week, or so at least we like to think.
We're going to try to be every week from now on, are we not?
Yeah.
Are we going to? Yeah. Can we stand by that commitment?
I think we at least ought to try.
We ought to try. Okay, but you should like us. I'm talking to you, viewers, listeners. Like us, subscribe, leave a comment, even though I didn't read any comments today. We love you. But you can leave even nasty comments. We like those too, because they game the algorithm.
And so we will see you hopefully next week. Thanks for watching and listening.